Ole, we've got another great guest today. We're welcoming for the first time Rebecca Carnes. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly, Rebecca?
Just Carnes. I appreciate the
Carnes.
Spanish twist, but just Carnes. Thank you.
Carnes. Yes.
Carnes.
Carnes is great.
Well, welcome to the show, Rebecca. You know, I apologize to viewers who were expecting to see Cody Snodgres. He was going to join us, but everybody knows that Cody is always up to all kinds of things and not always available. The other thing I want to caution people about is that the image that we showed in today's thumbnail video is definitely going to play a role in what we intend to discuss. However, Ole, you and I have done a remarkable number of videos that have been the subject of basically getting us kicked off of every single platform that people can imagine. So we want to make sure we don't mention certain things while we're here on YouTube and Facebook and Periscope and all of these publicly accessible platforms. And I know a lot of people, Ole, tell me to get onto BitChute and DLive. And the interesting thing is, I've been on those platforms for 2 and 3 years. So for people who are advocates of those platforms and don't even realize that we're there, obviously they don't have the reach that we're looking for. And this is why Ole has helped me develop this sponsor exclusive show, which people can access by going to patreon.com/lightonconspiracies, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And that's not to suggest that we're going to discuss anything that would violate any kind of civil torts or anybody's right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, but we touch on some controversial subjects, and we want to make sure that the people who are viewing it are people who have opted in to that viewership. Ole, Rebecca, welcome to the program. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. But,
Great, I'm doing great.
Very good.
So I would like to say, first of all, also welcome to Rebecca here. I think it's absolutely wonderful and remarkable when somebody who has been living very close to one of the biggest alleged mass shootings in the US of A, now in the process of finding out that something totally different actually happened that day. And this, for me, it's fantastic because, as you might know, I've been doing this for almost 40 years, and it's like standing knocking on an invisible glass wall where it's just like nobody can hear you and they can see you, but there's no communication whatsoever. And then also, I and other people like Jim Fetzer, Walter Hallbig, and so on have been very courageously, I would say, without blowing smoke up my own butt, but it's very scary areas, have been exposing big time what actually went on that day. And so the repercussions have been drastic. I mean, Fetz and Hallbig, both of them have big court cases, like $1 million and something like that, just for being looking for the truth. That's all we're looking for, is like the truth. And the reason why the truth is important is not so much maybe for the local inhabitants of that place, but it's because of all the solutions we're being offered to this alleged terror attack or this alleged mass shooting. So it's always the same old story: problem, reaction, solution. And the things that follows all of these operations are very drastic. And it's so much bigger than just the local city or the local county or whatever, because it goes nationally and then internationally. So I find it extremely inspiring that someone who lives on location have become aware. Because I know, Rebecca, when you first were informed and you read and heard about this story, even though you lived just a few miles away from it, you totally bought into it. Is that correct, the official narrative?
Oh, that's right. I heard on the radio and got the news along with other Newtowners just when it was breaking and schools went into lockdown in my town. And I completely believed it. I went into the local Dunkin' Donuts where they had a big screen TV, and Newtowners were congregated around it watching CNN. When the news just broke, I was on the phone with my mother saying, wow, I think someone's actually been killed in this shooting, some adults. And then I said, wow, Mom, I said, I think even the little children, and I was really upset. And my mom said, no, I don't think it's children too. And just then the CNN ticker came on that children had been, and believe me, Ole, my kids were second graders at the time. Luckily, they were in a magnet school, so they were not nearby, but they were not in Sandy Hook Elementary School. But I believed it. That's right, Ole. I believed the story. I went to St. Rose Church a few days later with my children. There was press everywhere, but we laid down some flowers. It was, I believe the narrative completely. I had no inclination that any kind, I did not know the term false flag. It was not part of my vernacular. I did not know anyone that studied into conspiracies and in my family or beyond or friends. So this was, and when I could get into how I kind of woke up, but boy, I just wanted to answer your question. I completely, for the past 7 years, before I started waking up about 6 to 8 months ago, believed the official story. The only hint of conspiracy I ever knew from coming from the mainstream media was Alex Jones. And for people like me and living in the matrix, as 85% of the population I think do, believe mainstream media and are stuck in this matrix mindset. I just thought, oh, Alex Jones, what a nutball, and this is horrible. Shut him down, lock him up, and I think Alex Jones is maybe controlled a little bit by the opposition, so to speak. But he was speaking the truth, and Wolfgang Halbig was sending him some information at the time that was indeed the truth about Sandy Hook. So. Yes, I did believe it, Ole. I did, yeah.
What I find is amazing is that, I mean, you are grown-up adults. I mean, you're sharp. There's no doubt about it. You're not sort of left behind the barn or something like that. You are on it, and still you bought into this whole thing. And I just want to point that out because it's so easy for people to say, but come on, you can't mean that. I mean, how can they get away with it? How, I mean, right in front of people, I mean, they would react, they would look into it, they would, but this is the case that apparently most people don't.
That's right. And, Ole, I am a very open-minded, critical thinking person. I am a journalist. That was my first career out of college, as I believe a journalist was your first career as well, Ole. And I have a skeptical mind, a critical mind. And but here's the thing: myself, as most people who watch mainstream media, were not presented with any of these cascading number of coincidences and discrepancies in the report around Sandy Hook and around all false flags like 9/11 and such. So if you're not given any of the truthful evidence or any hint of these discrepancies and these numerous cascading coincidences, you're not going to suspect anything. You're just not. And the media is controlled, is owned by something like 7 corporations, and that's it. And to poke through that membrane to get to someone, to try and give them a hint of the truth, is very difficult. And you also, I think, Ole, you have to be the type of person that has a mindset that their mind can be lifted ajar a little bit to let some of the truth in. Because as you know, most people, when presented with the truth and with facts that counter the official story, they close down. They don't want to hear it. It's scary. It will collapse their whole framework of reality, and they push it aside and they don't want to confront it. And that's what we're up against. With most people.
I'm pleased we have you with us today, Rebecca. And I want to make sure that for people who are listening, when we're talking about things in absolutes like truths and falsehoods, false flags, the important thing for people who are watching to remember is that irrespective of what may be definitively true or definitively false, a lot of the people that you're talking about, including the people on this program right now, are being punished for simply asking questions, whether or not we know the truth or we designate something as false. You speak about Alex Jones, you speak about Wolfgang Halbig, some of these people who have been, Jim Fetzer, sued into oblivion for asking these questions. It is true that when we speak imprecisely, we may open the door to some of these predatory lawyers who a simple statement could be seen as defamatory, or, of course, when we're dealing with children, anything that you say about it can be so inflammatory. And separate from the case in Newtown, Connecticut, Ole, isn't it true that a perpetrator of this type of false flag, and we need to reiterate for people, the term false flag doesn't refer to a fake event. It's a real occurrence that gets blamed on somebody else. So, if Team A wants person B to think Team C did something, Team A does it, blames it on C, convinces B it's C, and there's just no questioning it. That's the essence of a false flag. Ole, haven't you seen the law, be it civil or criminal, used as a weapon against some of the people that try to question these things?
Are you kidding me? Welcome to my life. It is all the time. It is such heavy incoming fire that and especially it's like people say, but maybe you do that to sell books or whatever. I tell you, if you are in this area of research, selling books is not easy because you're being shut down right, left, and center. So the whole financial system, or whatever they say, benefits, I say anyone who would like to change shoes with me, feel free. I do not think they would appreciate the whole thing. And also, what I want to say with this is, especially when there's women and children that have officially been murdered, I mean, to step forward and say, no, that was not what happened. Not easy, because you are in front of a lynch mob who will just say, how dare you, how can you? So this is the last, I don't know how many, 20 years of my life when I specialized in false flag operations, because I started to see this pattern of what was going down, and it just didn't make any sense. And that's why I kept digging. And this has led me into hundreds of cases that are so similar. It's just different locations and different countries, but it's the same modus operandum being worked out. It's the same false flag operations where the attacked one is actually the attacker. It's a psychological operation, and all the time for some purpose, the solution, problem, reaction, solution. It's all the time they create a problem. The only thing that matters to them is the solution that we would never ever have accepted had it not been for the problem, reaction, solution.
And it's very interesting for us, Ole, to have someone like Rebecca join us, because as she's explaining to us, this is not an area of research that she was focused on. She just happened to be a resident of the town where it occurred. And Rebecca, when we transition over in about 15 minutes to our sponsor exclusive segment on patreon.com/lightonconspiracies and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, I'm going to want to get into more detail with you as to how you started to realize that something seemed not quite right. And it's very interesting because a lot of people who Ole and I speak with, they have these different moments. People refer to them as red pill moments. Some people it was the Las Vegas shooting. Some people it was Sandy Hook. Some people 9/11. Some people the JFK assassination. But these are all examples of incidents where something definitely occurred. But as you've said, when we start to look at the totality of evidence presented, it doesn't seem to align with the story that we're hearing on the mainstream news. Now, you spoke about Alex Jones. He's definitely been, sort of pushed out of social media and sued a lot. What are your feelings about that?
Well, yeah, Jason, and that's right. And just to get back to your first point, when you talk about presenting the truth or trying to speak about the truth in a general sense, it really is about questioning the official story that's delivered to us by the government and the media. That's what it's about. And they are shutting us down, as you know, on these platforms, social media platforms, but also through lawsuits, like you said. It's a very people like Ole and myself and you, Jason, we're putting ourselves out there at risk, not just for physical harm and psychological harassment, but also with lawsuits, as Jim Fetzer has experienced, Wolfgang has experienced, and I've experienced some pushback from the law in my local Newtown. So, but to answer your question about Alex Jones, that's right. I mean, he's been harassed ad nauseum, and this is what they do. That I've learned what they do is this threat of lawsuits or actual lawsuits, this psychological harassment or these shutdowns on social media or on platforms, because they really don't want the information getting out there to the general public, the 85% that are blue pilled or have their eyes closed, so to speak. That's what they're trying to shut down. And you know what? We're messengers, really. We're researchers. We're individual, independent investigators and journalists, but we're also messengers, and they want to tamp that down at all costs. And they will go after you, and they'll hit you. They'll hit you in the pocket. They'll hit you financially. They'll hit you every which way they can, as I'm sure everyone listening probably knows. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've certainly experienced that on different topics. I had not created Crowdsource the Truth. And frankly, people are surprised when they hear this, but other than, you know, the cursory looking at the mainstream reporting, I still haven't delved deeply into this incident. I'm aware of the players. I'm aware the lawsuits occurred. I mean, even now, just looking at this article here in the Orlando Sentinel, you know, it's saying all the typical stuff, right, Ole? I mean, they refer to Mr. Halbig as a conspiracy theorist, and right away they have a mocking tone where he's quoted, he's saying he's requesting official documents that were denied. Doesn't seem like a crazy thing to do, but the fact that they're denied is quite interesting. The other thing that I've noticed, and this is interesting, Rebecca, I don't know to what extent you've interacted with or come in contact with some of the people that I refer to as social engineers, but there are so many of them hovering around this story in particular, and I've actually even observed some of the most aggressive social engineers who have pursued me were making videos about this when it occurred. And their temperament in those videos, it's vastly different than it is today. I don't want to go into too much detail just yet, but when we have the opportunity to speak to the audience a little bit more kind of open on our sponsor exclusive segment on patreon.com/lightonconspiracies and Subscribestar on Patreon for Crowdsource the Truth. We'll go into some detail about what I'm discussing, but it's just remarkable how much noise and confusion surrounds this whole story when there should be transparency and clarity. Yeah. That's
right, Jason. And they muddy the waters a lot. And they also try very hard to discredit people like Ole and myself. I have a hired, I guess they call him a spook. He's definitely hired by the CIA or something. He hangs out on my local blog, and he just bombards me with comments, and he misdirects. Spreads disinfo, or he attacks me. He has a blog personally dedicated to just me and Jim Spetzer in our association.
Really?
Yeah, and you know what? It's all about putting the tinfoil hat on us and making us out to look, crazy, which is an old kind of Russian tactic or some such nonsense. You know, throw them in the mental institution because they're crazy to question the official narrative, and that's what they do to you, as I'm sure, Ole, you know.
This is the blog, right, Rebecca?
Yeah, that's my blog, right.
And sorry, Ole, real quick, because what Rebecca is telling us, we are putting together a pattern and practice. I want to find out when we get over to Patreon and Subscribestar exactly who it is that's targeting your blog and has made their own blog to target you, because this is the exact same behavior of the exact same individual I was thinking of, who appeared on a Max Egan broadcast speaking very intelligently about how difficult it would be for an autistic person to fire with such accuracy, raising a point that I had not really thought about. It was really quite a cogent observation and really a contrast to the way this individual behaves now. This was 5-6 years ago. Ole, I can tell you are chomping at the bit. We've got just about 2 minutes until we make our transition. What do you want to share with everybody?
No, I just want to say if you come with us to Patreon, I will give away free copies, PDF copies of Fetzer, a book that I helped him design and so on, for free. It was the first version that was banned by Amazon. I think it was one of the first books ever banned by Amazon.
Wow.
And if you come over to Patreon, I will give you the link, and because that is, I think it's like, I'm not sure, 300-400 pages of just look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, in consequence. I mean, what do you call it?
Sequence.
It doesn't match up with the official narrative. So this is not a matter of trying to prove something. It's trying to expose what actually happened so that we can get out of these chains that have been put on us because of these events.
Yeah. So that's a great reason for people to join us on patreon.com/lightonconspiracies. I always do try to encourage Crowdsource the Truth sponsors to sponsor our co-hosts. And Rebecca, of course, your blog is free for people to look at. They can just go there. Do you want to give us the URL real quick?
Boy, I wish I had a simple, precise URL, but I don't want to give Wix any money, so it's a convoluted one.
I see it here. R44R Rebecca.wixsite.com. What I'll do is I'll post that into the comments here, and then people can check that out after the show. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to end our broadcast here, and people can join us in just a few minutes on Patreon and Subscribestar. Really looking forward to you sharing your information about the ordeal that you've been through. Sorry, Ole, was there one more thing there?
Yeah, I just want to say, I really want to salute Rebecca's courage to step forward, to do that on the location, with neighbors, with people in the community, with it, to stand up like that. You got a fan club over here, I tell you that. So please come over, follow us to Patreon, and then get inspired by Rebecca's story and see what you can do where you live.
Thanks for having me, Ole, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah, we're looking forward to the in-depth conversation. And of course, there's false flags that we're all living in right now. So this is going to be a very interesting conversation for people to see. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you on Subscribestar and Patreon in just 5 minutes. Join us there.